So, this is all down to the equalisers that come bundled with the software, with the main sequencers. And I've noticed it on even commercial products as well. Let's get Ultra Beat. Logic's built in. We'll use an analog kick drum. I'm going to keep it really short. The reason I'm going to keep it short, and it's analog, so because it's quite a pure tone, there's going to be no sample noise or anything like that around. So let's just bust that off. And do you know, I didn't realise I did this. It's not mentioned anywhere in Logic 8, but you can finally bust something out and pick up the bus as an input now, which is brilliant. Because if you've got multiple things, you can put like all your drums on bus 1. And then pick up 4 blank audio channels and just re-record it all in. It's great. Call it nonsense for the minute. Oh, and mute the return. So, there's our analog kick drum. And what I'm going to do is actually cut just a previous point. Cut about, say there. Put a little fade on it. Copying some optics there.
So what did you just do there? Just normal, glue it all together?
Yeah, just to make one bit. Now, if you have a look at this, you can see very pure bass tone and absolutely nothing in between on the waveform. There's a little blip, there's a tiny bit of DC, but there's absolutely no frequencies involved in that. Now, if you take the Logic EQ, put it back quietly a minute. Not even a particularly high Q. This might not do it, it's sounding different already. We'll have a look. It should bounce it down.
Too fixed.
I'd be amazed if it was, because it was quite. It was. There's the bin. You see it there? You see the frequencies appeared? You see it peter out? Now in the top one there was nothing. That's not a very good example at all. We actually had ghosting on one of them where you'd EQ things and it was almost like this reverb was being created. We heard it on drum tracks and kick drums in particular. And I used to have to go through on certain mixes that we'd done that we bounced down internally and actually chop out the gaps in between the kick drum again because there were sort of smearing of frequencies going on. Let me just check that's not dithering on there. No dithering. It's really annoying not to be able to show you properly. But look, you see that there? Absolutely nothing there. So it's creating information after. So let's zoom these back up properly. And that's so much better than it used to be. Sample editor. Yeah. I actually want it in a separate window. You can't do this easily now, can you? So as you can see, pure. But if you take the new one and go to the same point, see the frequencies? It may be tiny, but if you've got bass EQ on every single instrument that you're running, and it only seems to work for specific frequencies as well, then you get this overspill of information, and it muddies all your bass end up. And even some of the waves EQ do it as well. The linear multiband I managed to get it to do once. Sometimes it's on particular sounds, and it's obviously just because all EQ algorithms are repetitive algorithms, so there's obviously there can be some smearing. But some EQs, like the Sony EQ, doesn't do anything like this at all. There's nothing after the actual event. And in my opinion, from what we've gone through, basically to sum up, these internal EQs are cheap algorithms. They're designed. They've done a really good job to fit a multi-band EQ of such power into a program, but there's no way they're at the same level as your big guns. People like Sony that have developed EQs for years and years and years. URS that spent ages doing all sorts of algorithms that will copy vintage sounds. The UAD ones as well. TC Power Core stuff's brilliant. And the Focusrite, which is based on impulse responses, so there's no way that you can get this sort of problem. But on some mixes we just couldn't work out why our bass end was phenomenally mucked up, and no matter what you did with it, it just wouldn't fit together. But then looking at this probably why.
So when did you kind of realise it?
It was just on one particular track where suddenly we were listening to the bass drum in solo, and it's like there's extra bass going on, and I literally went in and cut out all of the bits in between, and suddenly everything started coming back together. But then there's other things we realised, like a lot of the small synthesizers, in fact nearly all synthesizers, because it's an algorithm generating the sounds, they generate frequencies right down to theoretical. So instead of like a Moog, okay, it will generate enormous amounts of sub, but it will naturally tailor off because of the audio. You're connecting an audio amplifier into another audio amplifier on a desk, and you naturally get this curve because these circuits can't go down to DC. They've got capacitors in them that stop that. But these things in here, they're amazing in the power that they've got, but you often have to actually roll sub off some of the bass sounds for it to even start to become natural. It's like the ESM in here is phenomenal, but if you try and use it just as itself, you won't be able to put anything else in your mix because all of your power is being taken up by this phenomenal amount of sub. And compounded with this kind of effect that you can see sometimes. The one thing that we do is we invested in some proper EQ plugins, and it's been the best thing that we've ever done. And also that thing helps as well in the TLA.
So what would you recommend as you recommend the Sony? Would you
it's very.
If one of our readers was just going to buy one, really.
Well, it's the funny thing is, okay, all the big EQ plugins are expensive. For example, the URS stuff, the bundle will come in at 850 quid. But you buy one of those equalisers by itself as an actual hardware unit, you're looking into the thousands at the very least. And it's strange that it used to be the case that everyone got excited about buying, spending £1,000 on a Roland JV1080 and things like that when they came out. But now everyone complains if you have to spend 250 quid on one bit of software. It's ridiculous, really. It's quite silly. If you do get what you pay for in processing algorithms, without a shadow of a doubt. And you can't go up against companies that have developed systems for years, like the Syntefx system that's in Focusrite's Liquid Mix is brilliant. They were working on that process for ages. As I say, the main ones we use here for EQ are the URS selection, that BX Digital as well. The stereo thing that you saw was brilliant. If you think of, we use that as mastering, but imagine that on a piano, being able to control the stereo information separately, and backing vocal sections. You can DS both sections separately, and that's another one of those plugins that's got a really tight bass end. The Sony stuff is stunning in its power, but when you first use it, you will freak out because you just touch it a tiny bit, and it will change the sound incredibly dramatically. But if you think about it, they're in a domestic or professional electronics division that were in charge of making some of the biggest the tape recorders at the time, things like that, the dash tape recorders, their investment in digital audio was phenomenal. And then they decided to make a digital desk to go with their digital tape machines. So they spent, I wouldn't like to imagine the amount of time and money poured into the EQ algorithm and the dynamics algorithms. So when you get them, they sound amazing. But yes, it's not an easy thing. It goes on forever, as you can see from our plugin list.